صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام، تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام، تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام، تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام، تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this, wonderful occasion, this wonderful program that we're putting on. My name is Asad Baig. I'll be reciting the opening ayahs, the verses of the Quran. I'm going to be reciting from chapter 49, which is Surah Hujurat. It will be verse 13, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge in God, Allah, from the accursed, rejected devil, Shaitan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. O humanity, indeed we created you from a male and a female and made you into peoples and tribes so that you may get to know one another. Surely the most noble amongst you in the sight of God, Allah, is the most righteous amongst you. God, Allah, is truly all-knowing, all-aware. صدق الله العظيم. Indeed, God, Allah, speaks the truth.
Everyone, welcome honored guests to the Islamic Center of Long Island's 18th annual Black History Month virtual celebration this year. My name is Zainab Bey, and I'm going to be your host this evening. To begin our Black History program, we had a wonderful recitation by Dr. Asad Baig, and I'd like to just thank him for that beautiful recitation. We have for you this evening a wonderful evening planned, one that we hope is going to be informational as well as inspirational. The speakers that are here that will join us at some point, they're just awesome. And they're doing some really profound work in the community and around the community at large. But before I invite them to join us, it's my privilege to introduce to you the new president of the Islamic Center of Long Island, Brother Amin Khwaja, who will join us via video recording to bring us some opening remarks. Let's welcome him to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace, mercy, and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be with all of you. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, welcome. My name is Amin Khwaja, the president of the Islamic Center of Long Island. It is an honor to have all of you join us this evening for our 18th annual Black History Month celebration. Of course, this year is the first year that we are not on campus at the Islamic Center of Long Island. However, thankfully, we have all become experts almost in transitioning our programs to a virtual platform. Thank you for taking the time away from your schedule to join with us this evening to celebrate Black History Month celebration. The theme of this evening's program, Equity and Justice for All, is definitely not unfamiliar. In fact, it is universal and desired as a fundamental pillar of our existence. However, in the history of our existence, providing equity and justice for all has been a constant challenge. Recently, we have witnessed the events of George Floyd and the many unfortunate similar events right here at home and across the globe. Our strive for equity and justice for all as Muslims is a core belief that represents who we fundamentally are. From the verses of the Quran to the teachings of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, we are urged and commanded to establish justice and make sure our relationships are dealt with equity, fairness, balance, which safeguards the rights, the properties, the honor, and especially the dignity of all people, irrespective of their race, ethnicity, gender, or religion. I'd like to thank our respected guests for joining us this evening and send a special thanks to Sister Zainab Bey, her committee, and our IT team that's working behind the scenes to organize this program. Please enjoy the wonderful program ahead of us. Thank you for joining us once again. Jazakallah khairan.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Brother Amin. Our next speaker is going to be Brother Habeeb Ahmed. Brother Habeeb is the former president of ICLI, and he is now the newly elected chair of Board of Trustees. And he is going to bring us greetings also via video recording. Let's give him a warm welcome as he joins the screen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good evening to one and all. My name is Habeeb Ahmed. I am the chairman of Islamic Center of Long Island. I welcome you to our 18th annual Black History Month celebration. It is amazing that by the blessings of Almighty, Islamic Center of Long Island is doing this meaningful event for the last 18 years. Islam is very clear about the sanctity of life. Quran, our holy scripture, says in chapter 5, verse 32, whoever kills an innocent person, it is as if he has killed the whole humanity. And whoever saves an innocent life, it is as if you have saved the whole humanity. That is chapter 5, verse 32. In chapter 49, verse 13, the same scriptures tell us how to get along with people, peacefully coexist, and I quote, O people, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into tribes and nations, so that you may know each other. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is the one who is most righteous of you all. In the end, I would like to especially welcome the 3 guest speakers, and we are honored to have you at this Islamic Center's event. In conclusion, I want to end with a peace prayer. This is from the tradition of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Astaghfirullah. Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam. Tabarakta ya zal jalali wal ikram. I ask God for forgiveness. O God, you are peace, and from you is all peace. Blessed are you, O owner of majesty and honor. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Habeeb. That was just such a wonderful opening, and everyone else who's spoken to bring us greetings. This is how we like to do things so that we feel like we're off to a good start now. And so moving forward, it's our honor to have remarks also from 2 esteemed political figures. So let me say that a lot of times there are just so many people who want to bring greetings to us, and we couldn't have everyone here. At some point, maybe they'll go into the chat and tell us that they're here, and we can let everyone know that they're in the audience today. But we have a fine person bringing us greetings today. The first one is, she's a lawyer, she's an activist, she's a politician, and she has the courage to stand up for every New Yorker. That is Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York. We will now welcome Ms. James via video recording to the screen. Let's listen to her remarks.
It is an honor to join all of you at the Islamic Center of Long Island in celebrating Black History Month. Every February, we come together to celebrate and recognize the many gifts Black inventors, scientists, artists, civil rights leaders, and others have brought to our nation and contributed to our culture and society. But the truth is, we shouldn't just honor and remember this work 1 month out of the year. Where would our country be today without the pioneering efforts of people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, W.E.B. Du Bois, Rosa Parks, John Lewis, Shirley Chisholm, and the myriad of others who fought to make our country a better one than they inherited? Those who refused to accept our nation's original sin, those who broke down barriers and fought for justice and helped us overcome some of our nation's darkest days. It was their generations of struggle and sacrifice that brought us a mighty long way towards fulfilling the righteous promise of American democracy. But our work is far from over. A devastating pandemic, racial injustice, rising inequality, increasing acts of hate, and deep divisions in places high and low are tearing at the very soul of our nation. It is an American tragedy that 57 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, and 56 years after Dr. King and thousands of civil rights foot soldiers convinced Lyndon Johnson to sign the Voting Rights Act into law, we face renewed attacks on the civil rights gains of the last 50 years. From economic and environmental injustice to renewed acts of voter suppression in communities of color, we are even seeing a surge in hate speech and dangerous and divisive rhetoric. And while the task might seem tall, I believe we have the ability to change the trajectory that we are on, from combating the scourges of hate, racism, discrimination, and inequality, to tackling the pandemic and supporting our most vulnerable communities, to ensuring that all of our children have access to the same opportunities. Each of us has a role to play in moving America forward and pushing our nation to realize its highest ideals. For in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Let us reflect on the sacrifices and contributions made by the generations of Black men and women before us. Let us emulate their hard work, persistence, and ambition as we continue on our fight to defeat the hate and systemic inequality that has persisted in our nation for far too long. Let's work together. Let's keep marching together to build a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss James, for those inspiring, beautiful opening remarks. Thank you very much. And now our next speaker, she is special to ICLI and to every part of Nassau County. She is the 9th county executive in county history and the first woman elected to the office. We welcome Laura Curran to the screen, also via video recording.
Hi everyone, it's Nassau County Executive Laura Curran, and I'm really happy to be joining with ICLI to celebrate Black History Month. So normally we do this at the Garden City Hotel and we can actually talk to each other in person, but of course in the age of COVID we're celebrating differently. But it's still important to celebrate Black history, to talk about Black history, to talk about the streams and threads of Black history that run through the fabric of our nation. I think Barack Obama said it very well. Every American can draw strength from the story of hard-won progress, which not only defines the African American experience, but also lies in the heart of our nation as a whole. Thanks for the invitation, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura Curran, for those heartfelt remarks for our event this evening. And as we move forward, we want to just clear up some things with you so you can be ready to become a little interactive if you have to. And so if you want to say anything at any time to anyone, you want to give a comment, would you please go into the chat section and share your comments, share your remarks, and if we can, we will share them with the audience if we have some time. Our motto for this chat today is if you hear something, say something. If it sounds good, then share it with us because we'd like to hear it. Also, you know, this is going to be not really a long program this evening, but if you want to get comfortable, please go out there, have some coffee, have some tea, have some snacks, And since COVID-19, we know everybody you have some snacks around. Everybody's got snacks. So have your snacks, sit down, and don't go away and stay too long and come back to us. So as I said to you when I opened up, on behalf of ICLI, I would like to express my humble thanks to each and every one of you for joining us this evening for our 18th annual Black History Month celebration. 18 years is a long time. And so I want to really give kudos to ICLI for their dedication and for their heart and really making sure that they share the importance of Black History Month with the community at large each and every year. And so that is really a testament to how they feel about the importance of this celebration and this really important time in our history. We are live stream and we have people joining us from all over the country and beyond. I want to thank, though, also before we really get started, our Black History Month Planning Committee for their commitment, for their time, and for their insight. And we are all eternally grateful to our tech team who helped make this program possible. Thank you all. Now, as you know, Black History Month, it is a time for honoring and recognizing the achievements of African Americans, but it's also a time to reflect on the related issues to equity and justice in areas such as health, housing, education, and politics. We are all too aware that we are living in some unprecedented times. The challenge of racial injustice is just so prevalent. But it's a funny thing when I started thinking about the term unprecedented times. I think that Harriet Tubman may have said that she was living in unprecedented times. And how about Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth? Would they have said that they were in unprecedented times? And let us not forget W.E.B. Du Bois, Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X, and the list goes on. While there is no doubt that progress has been made in our history, unfortunately for decades, too many African Americans continue to struggle in all areas of this society. But through the struggle, America has been blessed to have some amazing individuals in every time who, in the words of former Representative John Lewis, are never ever afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. Black History Month is a time also for calling out the good actions, the good deeds, and calling out the people who make things happen. So let's kind of take a moment and call out some of these people. We can never forget our first African American president of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama. And this year, we are so proud to have our first Black, first South Asian, and first woman to be elected vice president, Kamala Harris. And please, let's acknowledge Misha Porter. Misha Porter is the first African American chancellor of the New York City Department of Education, the largest school district in the nation. And let's recognize Raphael Warnock, the state of Georgia, the first Black senator. And a huge shout out to Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, Kizzy, okay, the lead scientist in the fight against COVID-19. She's put her stamp on history. In the history books, she will be written. And in the words of Dr. Fauci, she is right at the forefront of the development of the Moderna vaccine. So today, while we're here together, we're here as a community to reflect and share some optimistic possibilities that individuals with drive, with foresight, with courage, they can and do bring about real systemic change in the matter of justice for all. So in the end, everyone benefits. And so we're going to start moving into the introduction of our wonderful, wonderful speakers. And so we have with us today three amazing women who work in the community, and they give so much of their time and they're so generous in their time. Our first speaker is Elaine Gross. Elaine Gross is the founder and president of Erase Racism. She is a regional civil rights activist in her own right. And Erase Racism is a regional civil rights organization based on Long Island. And it exposes and addresses the devastating impact of historical and ongoing structural racism, particularly in housing and public school education. It does so through research, policy advocacy, legal action, educating and mobilizing the public. It also provides a variety of consulting and training services to increase racial equity. Under her leadership, Erase Racism has been recognized locally and nationally for its cutting edge work. She launched in 2018 the ongoing region-wide public initiative, How Do We Build a Just Long Island? The initiative began with 5 public forums and continues to involve Long Islanders in exploring issues relating to structural racism and implicit bias and participating in legislative and policy action. Ms. Gross, her bio reads like Who's Who in America 50 times over and over again. And we could sit here all night and probably talk to her and read about her, but we're going to bring her to the stage at this time, and she's going to share some of the fabulous work that she's doing. Let's welcome Elaine Gross, President, Erase Racism.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be with you. I'm going to use my time to give you a sense of how one can, against the odds, can make a difference. We know from comments that others have made that there is a long history of racial discrimination and segregation against African Americans. And unfortunately, the government has been a perpetrator of that over the years. We know that that has impacted Long Island directly. And I'm just going to mention housing as an example. The fact that when we were starting to be a suburb with the community of Levittown, the Black soldiers that came back from World War II were not allowed to purchase homes there. And the federal government ensured that by saying that they would have to be racial covenants in the deeds that would forbid them for being able to live in that community. Fast forward to some of the work that Erase Racism did, we had some lawsuits that looked at rental housing on Long Island, one in Nassau, one in Suffolk. We used what's called testers. It was an undercover situation. And we found that the Black testers were denied access to the rental housing. They were told there were no vacancies when we knew there were. The white testers were shown the vacancies, etc. And then fast forward again, as a result of that work, when I was contacted by Newsday, I did say to them, you know, you all could do some testing. And as it turned out, they took that advice because in 2019, they shared with the world, with all of us, the results of their 3-year investigation. And still, 49% of the time, people that look like me were being discriminated against, in this case, when they were looking to purchase homes. 39% for Hispanics, Latinx people, and 19% for Asians. So you might say, well, what comes out of that? Well, the New York State Senate took notice. There were 3 committees. There were public hearings. I was one of the expert witnesses at 2 of the public hearings, made recommendations of various kinds. And this January, because of the work of those 3 committees, the Senate passed a package of 11 policies and laws that would increase the state's role in enforcing fair housing. Now, someone said it has taken a long time, and one would say, why do we still need to just keep at it? We need to keep at it because we don't have a choice. Until we actually have the racial equity that we all deserve, we have to keep at it. And so I'm so encouraged that the Senate has taken up this legislation. We need the Assembly to act on it and the governor to sign it. And it will make a difference. And so I know that also because in 2016, we organized a statewide coalition to amend the human rights law so that legal source of income would be a protected class. What that means is people could not be discriminated against because of the type of income they were using to pay for their housing, as long as it was legal. And it took a while. We started in 2016, but in 2019, that amendment was passed and became law. So people who are using housing assistance, veterans assistance, alimony payments, disability assistance, those people will not be able to, it will not be possible to discriminate against them based on those legal sources of income. So I tell you this because I want you to understand that it's not that you decide you want to do something good and then you snap your fingers and it happens. It is a tedious and sometimes you don't get success the first time around, but you have to keep at it. And those are also the things that we've been teaching high school students who are members of our student task force. We have about 61 active members now from 25 different school districts. And they have been doing things like creating lesson plans that are what we call culturally responsive, meaning that they provide an educational experience. They're dealing with all of the requirements, but they are also including a variety of perspectives, and they are speaking to people from all different backgrounds. And the idea is that we should have a variety of authors, and that Long Island students should learn about the Long Island history that I shared with you. That government segregation, Long Island is among the 10 most racially segregated metro regions in the country. And that's why, because we started out segregated and because the enforcement has not been there, fair housing enforcement, the way it should. And, maybe now with the Senate taking these other actions, we'll be able to have some progress. But we are so proud of those students for their efforts. Some of them have gone back to their schools and they've started racial equity clubs. They're making suggestions about codes of conduct to have more restorative justice. And I also mentioned the curriculum changes with the lesson plans. So all of us can do something. We adults can do something. Our elected officials can do something. Our students can do something. We have to be persistent. We have to be patient, and we have to work together with each other. And I'm very pleased to be with you this evening because Erase Racism and the Islamic Center of Long Island have a long relationship of working together. And I'm extremely proud of that partnership. And I want to congratulate ICLI for all of its work and its continued leadership. So thank you for having me with you this evening. I want to say to you, I do have another commitment at 7:30. So I'm going to stay on as long as I can to be with you. So my best wishes to everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, that was very, very informative. Thank you very much, Elaine Gross, for being here with us, and kudos to you for working with our young people, the students. We can't wait to work with kids. You can't wait till they're in their 20s and 30s. We have to grab them while they're nice and young so they can understand how the system works, and so they can feel like they can be a part of it as they go on into their adult lives. And so it will always be, it's almost like a part of their DNA. So congratulations to you and the work that you're doing with your team. And we look forward to hearing from you more in the future. And so with that, we're going to move now to our next distinguished guest speaker. We have with us Reverend Barbara Felker. Reverend Felker is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Community Partnerships at Northwell Health. She also is currently responsible for the development of strategic initiatives to improve healthcare equity and access for diverse cultural and social economic communities. Reverend Felker, she has more than 20 years experience in diverse industries that include talent management, diversity, inclusion, health equity, labor relations, state legislation, and consulting. Wow. She served as the legislative director for the New York State Senate upon completion of her fellowship from the Center of Women in Government and Civil Society at the Rockefeller Center College of Public Affairs and Policy, University at Albany. Her career trajectory includes progressive leadership positions at New York Presbyterian's Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital, the Brooklyn Hospital Center, and HR Dynamics Counseling. She serves as the co-lead of Northwell's faith-based COVID-19 testing vaccine collaborative. She is an ordained minister, and she serves as pastor of leadership development at the High Bridge Community Church, Bronx, New York. She has a tremendous line of things that she has done that led her to us today so that she could share some of the good things that she's doing with her teams also. Without further ado, let's give a nice warm ICLI welcome to Reverend Barbara Felker. Please join us on the stage.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Such a pleasure to be here. I want to start with a story around our doctor, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. On August 28, 1963, more than 200,000 demonstrators took part in a march on Washington for jobs and freedom in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. The diversity of those in attendance was reflected in the event's speakers and performers. They included singers Marian Anderson, Odetta, Joan Baez, and Bob Dylan, actors Ossie Davidson and Ruby Dee, the American Jewish Congress President, Rabbi Prince, A. Philip Randolph. The march organizer was Bayard Rustin. The NAACP president was Roy Wilkins, and the National Urban League President Whitney Young, and the SNCC leader John Lewis, and a host of others. The march was successful in pressuring the administration of John Kennedy to initiate strong federal civil rights bills in Congress. And during this event, Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., delivered his memorable "I Have a Dream" speech. I remember watching this speech as a very young girl, sitting in front of the TV with my grandmother, without understanding really what Dr. King was speaking about or why. Because as a member of a very loving family, I had not experienced the racism of the world. I was eagerly searching the 200,000 faces at the march, trying to find my mother in the crowd, as she had participated in the March on Washington. And I have the buttons that she wore at the march. I proudly wear them now with an understanding of the purpose and the reason for this major event in civil rights history. The prophetic words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King continue to have relevant meaning in today's society. As one of the world's greatest theologians and philosophers, Dr. King used the world as his pulpit to eradicate racism and poverty. His voice was able to bind the ties of freedom and justice. His dream is strongly demonstrated in today's society as the debates pertaining to healthcare equity and access for all are still a major component of today's political platforms and discussions. It's hard to believe that systemic racism that has prevailed over the years is still the main factor that has sustained the inequalities in quality healthcare access, education, employment, housing, as Elaine had just spoken about, and other disparities. After rising steadily for 50 years, the US life expectancy fell in 2015, 2016, and 2017, and will most certainly drop in 2020 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This drop in life expectancy that began to decline in 2015 was not due to an infectious disease, war, or biological limit to how long humans can live, but it is relative to the persistent systematic inequities of racial disparities in the health system, along with increases in deaths from opioids, alcohol, and suicide, of which they call deaths of despair. The ultimate story of COVID-19, written through the lens of history with all the final death statistics, we're over 500 million, will undoubtedly mirror what we already know from hard data on US life expectancy. On average, the haves outlive the have-nots. In a country where the responsibility for healthcare is really placed largely on the individual, and life expectancy varies dramatically based on disparities deeply rooted in geography, wealth, and race. Your zip code can determine how long you will live. The view of many public health researchers describe today's segregation factors that severely limit access to healthy foods, green space, and a higher exposure to environmental hazards, living in very condensed areas. You see higher rates of obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. And the CDC states that the health differences between racial and ethnic groups are often due to the economic and social conditions, and we know that for a fact. Lack of access to grocery stores with fresh foods. Many people shop at the corner bodega. Access to healthcare and medical facilities. A lot of people use the emergency room as a primary care physician and only go when they have severe episodic encounters with a health issue. We have the lack of paid sick leave and people having to go to work while they're ill, amongst a lot of other systemic factors, impact the health and wellness of populations affected. With better access to healthcare and the ability for people to confidently stay at home when they're sick, we saw that with the essential workers that could not shelter in place, a significant change would occur. But this would require significant government shifts. The civil rights movement in the 1960s incorporated the collaboration of unions, faith institutions, and civic organizations to make the statement of equal rights. Communities were actively involved, as we saw in the Montgomery bus boycott, stemming from Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat on the bus and move to the section designated for people of color. The boycott lasted for 1 year, and those communities along that bus line walked for miles that entire year. They did not ride the buses. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Northwell Health developed the faith-based collaborative initiative to provide access to COVID testing and vaccines in the communities that were disproportionately affected by COVID. If you remember, the first testing sites were drive-throughs. But if you live in a community and you take public transportation, there was no place for you to get a test. These same communities have high percentage rates of chronic diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and lung disease, which made them prime for higher rates of COVID and COVID-related deaths. We work closely with the faith leaders to develop a strategy of outreach and communication to ensure that the Black and Brown communities were able to obtain COVID tests and vaccines. Dr. Ishma Chowdhury and the Islamic Center of Long Island have been close, committed partners from the beginning of our faith-based initiative. And due to previous medical mistreatment stemming from the Tuskegee experiment and the use of HeLa genes without family consent, involuntary sterilizations in Black and Latinx communities, there is a great mistrust of the COVID vaccine, resulting in vaccine hesitancy. We had the privilege of joining a panel discussion with the Islamic Center on vaccine hesitancy. The faith leaders have been very instrumental in helping us to understand vaccine hesitancy and develop strategies to reduce hesitancy by participating in educational forums and outreach. As the churches and houses of worship are the trusted entity of the community and the faith leaders are the trusted leaders of the community, we have been able to build collaborative relationships that have enabled us to expand our reach into communities that we had not been deeply involved in previously. Together, we have been able to bring access to these communities for COVID-19 services, education, with the intent to develop strategies that will also increase access to healthcare in our efforts to improve the health and wellness of these communities. Northwell Health was asked by the governor to develop and facilitate the Health Equity Task Force for the Long Island region. Now, the task force is comprised of civic organizations such as the NAACP and Erase Racism, which are led by our speakers this evening, Tracey Edwards and Elaine Gross. And Dr. Ishma Chowdhury, also on the task force, serves as co-chair of the Education and Outreach Committee. The task force is also comprised of faith-based leaders, community-based organizations, legislative and government agencies. And the mission of the Health Task Force is to improve the health and wellness of the Long Island region and address the social determinants of health through education, outreach, and strategic planning of health delivery services. When we look at the fact that life expectancy is driven by the lack of access to care and where we live, we must examine equality and equity, as all things equal will not resolve the issues. Examining the issues from a lens of racial justice will create a shared vision of a fair and inclusive society with the ability to develop transformative solutions. We must include the voices of the people affected as we develop these solutions. We must also involve the government and government agencies and create strategies to increase access to care, focusing on building civic, cultural, and political power by those impacted. This must be an all-inclusive community action, resulting in legislative changes to address the structural root causes of the disparities that exist. And Elaine Gross just talked about the legislation victories that they've had to make those changes happen in housing. We saw this with the outcome of civil rights activities that took place over a period of time. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream and professed a future of hope that continues to inspire us to take action in reaching the goals of equity and justice for all. Dr. King stated, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" These prophetic words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. continue to resonate over the decades. We must live the dream with action that includes each one of us, every one of us. I want to thank Dr. Chowdhury and Sister Zainab and the Islamic Center of Long Island for allowing me the opportunity to participate in this evening's Black History event. And I am hopeful that we, as a community, will continue to work collaboratively to increase the health and wellness of the communities that we live in, that we serve, and that we want to ensure are healthy, if for no other reason than the sake of our children. I thank you all, and I feel very blessed to be here this evening.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And we are blessed to have you. We have a chat. Ladies and gentlemen, please go to the chat. If you want to say something to some of our speakers, please give your comments. Let them know how you feel, what you're thinking. There are so many wonderful people working behind the scenes. You may not know who they are. They're known and very well known in their own communities, but outside of the community, we may not know. That's why we have these kind of venues. We have these kind of celebrations so that we could bring people here so that they can share on the platform the work that they're doing. Yes, Dr. Ishma. Yes, Brother Habeeb. Inspiring is really beyond inspiring. Every single day, there are so many people, blacks and whites, everybody who go out there and they make a conscientious decision to go and to fight, to legislate, to write proposals, and to get people together to talk about and to look for, not just to talk, but to look for changes that's going to come about in the area of justice. I don't know if you've ever been lost. I get lost in the bathroom. Okay. I get lost everywhere. And if you've ever really been lost and nervous, and then someone comes and gives you the direction and you get there, the feeling that the relief that you feel. I don't know if you've ever not had money and you can't pay a bill, or if you haven't had food and you don't know how you're going to get that food, and someone comes and they help you, the relief that you feel, that is our responsibility to help each other. And when we come together during these kind of celebrations, yes, it's nice to call out the names. It really is. But then it's also important that we say, well, what can I do? What can I do? One little thing to change this. We talk about the trajectory of poverty and injustice, the trajectory of equity. How can we fix it? And so it doesn't have to be big things, small things. And so I thank every one of you who are sitting in our audience. And we have some of those people with us. We're going to give them some nice acknowledgments right now. We have Senator Anna Kaplan with us. Yay, Senator Anna Kaplan. And we have Judy Boswick, North Hempstead Town Supervisor. Yay, Judy Boswick. When I can't see you, I've got to do what I have to do to kind of like let you know that we appreciate you so much. And we have also in our company this evening, Legislative Arnold Drucker. Yay, Arnold Drucker. So, all righty, go to the chat. Don't be a stranger to the chat. Go to the chat and say something nice to the folks who are here. Acknowledge them, acknowledge the work that they're doing, because it's too important. One of the things that we've been doing at ICLI, we have to really, someone thank the management of ICLI, but having been a site where we could do COVID testing, and where we can have the vaccine. I mean, these are just such important things that's happening for us, and we really need it. Another thing that we're doing, we talk about injustice and equity. Food. Can you imagine that people don't have food? Something basic. I just read something recently about water. I wish I had taken down the person's name. And she said, under Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., they were thinking, they wanted to change going to dirty water fountains and drinking off of the dirty fountains, because those fountains for colored only, they really were not kept up. But now we have to think about drinking dirty water in some communities. How awful is that? We have to change that. And there are people out there who are working to do that. And so while they may not be here, we acknowledge them. We want them to know that we thank them for the work that they are doing. We talk about great minds thinking alike. And Reverend Felker, we want to thank you again. Please say something nice about Reverend Felker. Please say something to Elaine Gross as she gets ready to leave us soon. And we're going to move to the next part of our program, which is going to be on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so there's a wonderful segue on Reverend Felker. Having watched Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when I was really just a small child on the black and white television, I don't know, his presence was always so commanding. And he was, I just think some people are just born in the world to do what they have to do. And then, they leave us. But what he's left us with is it's just iconic and legendary. And we at ICLI with the weekend school, we've been talking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but before we get to our kids, that March on Washington, can you imagine how he felt when he stood there and he gave that speech, I Have a Dream? Before we call our next speaker to the stage, we're going to take a minute to acknowledge one of the most influential, well-known civil rights leaders and eloquent speakers of all times. And so with that, we're going to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. just for a little bit. Again, when we come together like this, calling out, acknowledging, so we don't forget. We can't forget. And our children, we have to make sure that we share this information with our children. And we have to make sure that this information also is shared in the schools. If you go into a school and it's January and we're supposed to be talking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and you don't see any signs of that, wow, we need to be asking some questions as to what's going on. When our kids come home and you call a name out and they don't know what you're talking about or who you're talking about, we need to be asking some questions. And so with that, it is an honor for Dr. King to be one of the most recognizable people in the world. You probably can go in the middle of any place, just put your finger and go there on the map and pull up the picture. Do you know this man? And somebody is going to say, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's how recognizable he is. He's legendary in the area of civil rights. And we're going to share an excerpt of his speech today. I have read his speech, I can't tell you how many times in my life. And just like you've probably read it so many times, you've heard it so many times. And each time I pick it up and read it or I listen to it, I get something else out of it. And we're going to just take a moment to acknowledge him. And so without further ado, let's listen to the excerpt of this iconic speech, I Have a Dream.
I have a dream today. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when it happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Just beautiful. So inspiring, so powerful, so memorable. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. there's another aspect to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and that is his wonderful, wonderful quotes. You know, if you say a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 9 out of 10 times somebody's going to know that that came from him. And so we what we did was at the weekend school, our students, they are going to share with you some of the quotes that we taught and that we talked about, and that they came up at the weekend school at ICLI. And so at this time, we're going to play some of our wonderful students a video recording and share some of their favorite Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. quotes. Will we play the recording, please?
The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at time of challenge and controversy.
In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Everybody can be great because anyone can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly.
Just beautiful. Thank you. One of my favorite quotes by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is, "We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." You know, I think I like this quote so much because it has a lot of little history to it. Not to say that all the others, trust me, there is a story behind each of those quotes that we would be here till next year if we really started breaking them down. But I like the quote because Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what he actually did was he modified the original quote. And then it became one of the favorite quotes also of President Barack Obama, our former president. He liked the quote so much that he had it woven into a rug in the Oval Office. I mean, that's really interesting. You know, we shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I love it. If you have a favorite quote, share it in the chat. We're waiting for you. Put it in the chat. Think of anything, and then we'll call it out. And so, without further ado, now is our time to hear from our next guest speaker. Our next guest speaker it's my distinct pleasure really to introduce her. I heard a lot about her before I actually had a chance to meet her. Okay, she has been described as a superwoman, and her name is Tracey Edwards. Tracey Edwards, she serves as Long Island's Regional Director of the NAACP, appointed by Hazel Dukes, President of the NAACP New York State Conference. Tracey supports 10 branches in Nassau and Suffolk focused on education, voting rights and civic engagement, public safety, criminal justice, economic empowerment, health, and environmental justice. On June 26, 2019, Ms. Edwards was appointed Commissioner of the New York State Public Service Commission. And the main purpose of this department was to ensure affordable, safe, secure, and reliable access to electric, gas, steam, telecommunications, and water services for New York State's residential and business consumers while protecting the national environment. After many years, Ms. Edwards, she actually worked for a long time at Verizon as a corporate executive. Tracey started, when she left there, she started her own consulting company focused on branding, diversity and inclusion, organizational development, and economic sustainability for underserved communities. Miss Edwards, she also serves residents as councilwoman in the town of Huntington for 4 years and is the former executive director of Habit for the Humanity of Suffolk. Tracey is a breast cancer survivor. She's a proud mother of three and a grandmother of three. Let's welcome Tracey Edwards to our stage. Welcome, Miss Edwards.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, first, I'd like to thank the Islamic Center. And the planning committee. It is truly a joy for me to be with you on your Black History program. And I'm so glad that you had it in March. History is American history, and it should be discussed throughout the year. I bring you greetings from Dr. Hazel Dukes, our New York State Conference president. And I'd also president of Westbury Branch and her offices and executive committee. It's wonderful for us to come together, even virtually, especially at this critical time in our country, in our state, and on Long Island. I'm honored to share this history program with the rest of the program participants, especially Elaine Gross and Reverend Barbara Felker, who's doing such a great job with Northwell to focus on equity for all. You know, like many of you, I'm so thankful that we made it into 2021. Sadly, many of us did not. In New York, thousands have died last year, not just from the virus, but many tragedies. I just took my second vaccination shot yesterday, Reverend Barbara. So my arm hurts just a little bit, but I'm so thankful that I took the vaccine. You know, I recognize that there is skepticism that still exists in our communities, and rightfully so. But we cannot let history repeat itself, where a disproportionate amount of minorities continue to die in 2021 because we are reluctant to take the vaccine. Because many of us take insulin, metformin, high blood pressure medicine. I myself took chemotherapy without question. We must do our research to save ourselves and our communities. And we also need the help of our religious leaders. Science investigates, religion interprets. Science gives man knowledge, which is power. Religion gives man wisdom, which is control. Science deals mainly with facts. Religion deals mainly with values. But the two are not rivals. During Black History Month, whenever I spoke, I wanted to acknowledge Frederick McKinley Jones, a Black American inventor. He created the refrigerator cooling system that is mounted in trucks. McKinley Jones. The vaccine is traveling all across the country. We need to teach our children about Frederick McKinley. Last year was a challenging year for us and our communities from a health perspective, economic perspective, more injustices, and another test of our faith. For me, it is important to always reflect back to that moment in time and renew our faith. But our faith is not just wishful thinking. We have to do the work. We have to hold ourselves, each other, and our elected officials accountable. We must pray and live out the teachings that Dr. King laid out before all of us to follow. When we talk about Dr. King, we are typically most comfortable focusing on the dream. But this year, we must focus on the dream and the struggle. Our challenge this year is to put the emphasis on his words when he was in the Birmingham jail, where his focus was on nonviolent campaigns and accountability. In that letter, he told us to collect our facts to determine where injustices live, negotiate where possible, self-purify and get ready for what to come, and prepare for nonviolent direct action. There were struggles similar to what we are dealing with now, where we have broken promises made from those that we have relied on, victims as a result of our leaders making commitments and never changing. Back then and right now, we are confronted with hopes and dark shadows of deep disappointment. We had no choice but take to the streets after George Floyd's murder to awaken the conscience of our local and national community. But it even exists here on Long Island. We have to face the challenges of racial injustices, the health disparities in full display because of COVID, the economic injustices that continue in our country, in our state, and on Long Island. Martin Luther King rightfully said that not one single gain in civil rights was done without legal and nonviolent pressure. History is the long and tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom want to give up their privileges voluntarily. Last year in Nassau County, elected officials honored at least 3 worthy African Americans by naming 2 buildings and a street after them. We commend them for doing that. Our challenge, my challenge, is to speak to them about what else are they going to do to ensure that the halls of justice and equity for all that are in those buildings, as it relates to voting, as it relates to supporting our communities, as it relates to eliminating racial disparities in policing, and ensuring that vaccination appointments are expedited in our most impacted communities. We must hold our elected officials accountable for their votes to ensure that the very people that they depend on, which is us, during election season, that they support us beyond Black History Month. For 2021, we must stand together for all other injustices and demand equity. We need to follow the plan that Martin Luther King laid out for us in that Birmingham jail, so that our children and our grandchildren can follow the dreams that Martin had for his 4 little children. Have we made progress? Absolutely. But we still have much to do to rid our Long Island of the direct and indirect, quiet, much too quiet complacency of racism from among us. Our communities must still collect and present our facts for racial injustices that still exist on Long Island, in the criminal justice system, in our healthcare system, in our job market, environmentally. We must stand together and stand firm for a future that includes all of us. This is the month for our changing of policing structure, and we must hold our county executives and our county legislators accountable for taking that right vote. You have Senator Kaplan on this program tonight. She took that vote. We stand with her. But we now need the county executive and the county legislators to stand with us, because it is not okay for our brothers and sisters to be searched more often, to be acceptable. It's not acceptable for them to be physically restrained more, be ticketed versus warned, to be placed in the back of a police vehicle. We must eliminate racial disparities, not just improve them. Like the anniversary of the Selma March today, we are still in the midst of a mighty struggle to rid our nation and our Long Island of racial and economic injustices. We must say no more. The end of the Birmingham letter is perfect for our time. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away, and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities in some not too distant tomorrow. The radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all of its beauty. I will leave you with one of Martin's powerful quotes. We want all of our rights. We want them here, and we want them now. Peace and blessings. Thank you.
And peace and blessings to you too, Tracey Edwards. Thank you very much. That was so inspiring. You know, when I introduced you, I said that you were known. Someone called you a superwoman, and you may be, and you just and you are. But you know, superwomen get tired. And, and yes, superwomen get tired. And so we as a community, we have to support superwomen because we don't want our superwomen to lie down and don't, their superpowers go somewhere else. And so continue. We pray that God always bless you and give you all of the strength that you need so that you can continue to do this work. We're so glad that you're here with us.
Thank you.
And yes, God bless you always. And thank you for everyone. They're putting quotes in the chat. I love those quotes, and it's we want to thank everyone. Justice, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, and to you, Tracey, the time is always right to do what is right.
That's right.
And we're going to
Thank you.
leave you. That quote was in the chat, and we're going to leave you with that one. Thank you so very, very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Reach out to Tracey. Go to the Miss Edwards. Please go to the chat and say something to our speakers, please. Thank you so very much. And so before we're going to keep moving our program forward. One of the most important things that we like to do at ICLI is to really involve our kids as much as we can. And we have 2 youth at ICLI, the weekend school, and they're also a part of the youth committee. And Sidra and Sanya Danielle. They're teenagers at the weekend school, and they have expressed interest in giving some questions to our guests. Now, they came up with a list of questions that we don't have time for, but we are going to ask our guests if at least one of those questions they crafted for you. So we're going to start with you, Reverend Felker. The question is, how do you ensure a more equitable healthcare system going forward after the lessons learned from COVID-19?
We learned quite a bit from COVID-19. One of the things that I think is most important is that we will have to change the health and wellness status of the communities that were disproportionately affected by COVID. So they had existing chronic diseases. We have to address that. We have to make sure that we have access to care in the communities. And one of the things that the Health Equity Task Force is doing is working with the federally qualified health clinics so that we can become integrated and really manage the health of the community employees. So we don't want to take the place of the FQHC in the community, but we want to work with them. This way, if someone comes into the emergency room, then that clinic will know that they visited us and how to maintain the continuity of care. So it has to be a strategic process where people can get care, access is key, and have continuity of care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. So to Miss Edwards, would you mind responding to one of the questions? And that is, what impact did the civil rights movement and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. have on the world?
Well, I think we're still learning about the impact of the civil rights movement and the impact of Dr. King, because today is the anniversary of that Selma March, and we're still not done. So all of the things that they have fought for, it is a reminder of all of the things yet to accomplish. So although they have made tremendous progress, we have to learn from what they have done and continue until we can accomplish what they have set out for. The path was laid for us. We just have to follow it.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you, and thank you. At this time, we want to give a huge kudos and accolade to our guest presenters today. Thank you, Elaine Gross, Reverend Barbara Felker, and Tracey Edwards for being here with us today. I cannot, and I'm sure everyone that's in this audience today can't thank you enough for a life of dedicated for serving others. You're not just serving others, but in some cases, you are saving people in New York City and beyond, saving lives. Thank you very much, and may you be blessed always. And so if anyone would like to put anything in the chat, please put it in the chat for us. And at this time, we are going to move to our final speaker. Our final speaker is Mufti, Dr. Mufti Muhammad Farhan, and he is the executive director at ICLI. And he is going to leave us with some reflective words of hope. And so at this time, we are going to call Mufti Farhan to our stage.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, sister.
Walaikum salam, Mufti Farhan. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for such a wonderful program. Thank you for being an inspiration for all of us and so much goodness, and for amazing lineup of great speakers. Thank you for your inspiration, for your kind words, and for all that you do. And it's an honor to be a part of this beautiful team. And congratulations to you, Sister Zainab, for this amazing event that you have worked so hard for so many weeks, and making it possible for all of us.
I don't know where you are in the world, but I'm not even going to ask you. But I want to say, when we work and when I work, and I thank you for that. But again, we look at our life as a team. We look at everything that we do as a blessing, and as people coming together, giving us ideas. So we thank you, and we thank you also. Okay. Do you have
Sister,
any?
subhanAllah, there was a death in the family, and I
Okay.
had to take care of the remains of the family and drop them to the airport. And, as clergy, as imam, we wear multiple hats and do so many things.
Yes.
So this is something that I'm doing, but I guess our message for tonight is hope. And that's what I want to speak to all of us about. Times of difficulties and trials come across everyone. But these difficult times that come upon us make us stronger and more united, more connected and more united. And I think when we are united, we are more productive. And when we are more productive, that's when the devil is afraid of us. And when we are not united, we are unproductive. And that's when the devil gets the best of us. And I think that's why hope is one of the biggest message for us for tonight. I was reading one of the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he mentioned that if you have a seedling in your hand and you see the day of resurrection beginning in front of your eyes, sow that seed even at that moment, knowing that the day of resurrection will begin right in front of you. Why? because that's hope. That's seeing the benefits that someone or something can benefit from something good that we have done. And I think with our connections, with love for one another, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned in one of his sayings that amongst the people who will find the shade beneath the shade of the Almighty, when there will be no shade except for his shade, will be people who love one another for his sake, love one another for the pleasure of the Almighty. I want to conclude by saying one of the passages from the Holy Book, the Quran, chapter 94, verse 5 to 8. Allah the Almighty mentions to his Prophet when he was going through a very difficult time in his early stages of his prophethood. The people who called him Sadiq and Amin, the truthful, the trustworthy. And after the message of prophethood, the same people went against him because they did not want it to leave the ideas of bad and evil. And when they were told to do the righteous deeds, they went against him. And when he was going through so much hard times, the Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God Almighty, revealed upon him chapter 94, which is known as Surah Al-Inshirah. Al-Inshirah in Arabic means to relieve someone of difficulty. It also means to open the chest of someone, to give them comfort, to give someone solace. The God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says, Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Have we not opened your chest for comfort and difficulty? And after mentioning so many beautiful things, Allah the Almighty tells his Prophet 3 things that I leave behind for tonight. He says, Inna ma'al usri yusra, inna ma'al usri yusra. For indeed, with every one difficulty that you see in your life, there are many opportunities of goodness that will open for you. If you see one door close, know that there are multiple doors of goodness about to open for you. When you see that something didn't work out for you in your life, know that there's something better for you to be there in your life. When something happens that you felt that was your idea and your plan and your vision, know that there's something better that is planned by the Almighty for us. So he says in the Holy Quran, Inna ma'al usri yusra, inna ma'al usri yusra. With every one difficulty, there are multiple amount of goodness that God will open for you. And not only once, but he repeats it twice to increase hope in our minds and our hearts that never give up. So the first point is never to give up. As believing men and women, we never give up. We always strive, we always try, we always work hard, right? And I said this previously as well, when they say it's no, the word no doesn't mean N-O, it means next opportunity. It's a chance to do something great again. I was speaking to one of these young kids and I said, tell me something inspirational. So he said, the 1,000 shots that I never took, I will never miss. Meaning if I don't try, I will never gain anything. We have to try in order to gain. Number 2 things the Almighty mentions to us, chapter 94, verse number 7 and 8. He says, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. Put all of your efforts. Do your duty. Don't give up. Don't just think that things will happen. Change will happen when we want the change to happen. Change will never happen by just us saying about the change. We have to be the change. We have to put the effort. We have to put the struggle. We have to put the work in to make sure that we make the change. And the word fansab in Arabic means to work so hard that you become tired and fatigued that you can't move anymore. It's not about, I tried once, I tried twice. No. Put so much effort till you become tired that you got to sit down. We got to work for justice. We got to work for equity. We got to work for equality. We got to talk. We got to work for togetherness and love for each other until we become tired. Not 1 day, not 2 days, not 3 days, till the last moments of our lives. And last but not least, the last verse of chapter 94, wa ila rabbika farghab. Never give up. Keep on working hard. And the last but not least, make sure you turn to God. You turn towards the Almighty and know that He's with you and He's there to help you. With this, I conclude by saying that we ask the Almighty to inspire us to become righteous individuals, people, serve Him, serve the humanity, serve the mankind. May He unite our hearts together. May He fill our lives with love and affection, care for one another, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this beautiful gathering as a means of virtuous deeds for us in this world and elevation for us on the Day of Judgment. And thank you, Sister Zainab, and I apologize for my setting and where I am, but this was very, very important. Losing a loved one for anyone is very difficult, but I hope this is the least that we can do for our loved ones. I ask you for prayers for us and all of us, and thank you for being an inspiration. Thank you for all the brothers and sisters working behind the scene. Dr. Isma Chaudhry, Brother Habeeb, Brother Amin, the team, you are the MVP, the most valuable people out there who are working so hard, so diligently. May Allah reward you and bless you all, inshallah.
Amin. And condolences to you and your family. And of course, we'll talk offline. Just thank you for being here. And you know, that's what I'm talking about. You know, we look at our brother Mufti Farhan, and he's going through something with his family, the loss of a loved one, and he's still here. He's still giving a message of hope. And so that I'm going to conclude this beautiful session with you today. I can't see you, but I could feel you. And no matter what happens, he's leaving us with, he says, put in all your efforts until we become tired. And so with that, I feel inspired. And I want to thank the entire team at ICLI. Dr. Ishmael Chaudhry, who used to be our former president at ICLI. I am going to call her out here today because, and she's also the former chair, but she is right at the forefront of so much that happens at ICLI. And I would be remiss not to call your name. And I say thank you to all of our guests and to everyone who participated in this program today. May you be blessed and may you come back and see us 19 years next year, if we're all here and all together. Be blessed. Thank you so much for being here. This concludes our evening. Thank you. Have a safe and happy and enjoyable evening and life.